Simon Clarke, who was a senior minister in the Johnson and Truss governments, said just a couple of days ago now that Rishi Sunak should be replaced because, I'm just quoting him now, his uninspiring leadership is taking the government into an election massacre.
True. I saw them down at like 19% in one poll.
Yeah, it's as bad as it was when Liz Truss was tanking the economy. In
19%.
In the post fiscal event polling period.
Yeah, this is
how
honestly
low they are currently.
Yeah, they're fucked. They're going to get wiped out at this rate.
They are absolutely
historical, like dustbin of history type wiped out. If Farage
it's Canada 93. It's Canada 93. I'm calling it now. It's Canada. It's going to happen. There's nothing stopping them. There's nothing that they can do to fix it. It's over. It's completely over. Reform UK have absolutely not. They were screwed anyway, right? Without Reform UK, Labour would have like a normal sized majority when a party is doing badly and gets another one come into government. But Reform UK have deliberately and strategically and almost kind of precisely fucked them to the point where the Tory party are going to get completely destroyed at the next election. Because there's nothing they can do to fix it, right? Basically, because mortgage holders, they've all broken for Labour now. It's the big change. And unless interest rates drop back down to 1% or some shit in the next 6 months, they're fucked. It's over. It's completely over.
Yeah. And I think the fact that Reform UK are actually really pushing this election, and they weren't in the last one, tells you all you need to know about the threat they see from Sir Keith. They saw an actual threat from Jumbly Crumbles.
Yeah.
And when, oh, fuck it, we can't afford, no, we'll just, even if it's a shit right-wing government, let's have it. Whereas this one, they're like, actually, you know what? Keir Starmer's probably just going to be a Tory anyway, so...
I mean, Ben Habib has been very open. Ben Habib was incredibly open on, I think it was GB News or Talk TV, I think it might have been Talk TV, explicitly said Keir Starmer is a price worth paying for destroying the Conservative Party. And because Keir Starmer does not threaten any of their interests in the slightest.
Yeah. Even though Tice called him a socialist. He also called Rishi Sunak a socialist, which rather puts paid to the idea of words having meanings.
You're right.
No, I think Simon's wrong. I've been slightly dreading this question. I thought
you must have known it was coming.
I thought this might come up, and I've been dreading it because Simon's one of my best friends, and he's.
So have you spoken to him directly?
Yeah,
about
I
it?
have.
What have you said? Go on, do let us in on the conversation.
Well, he knows my views, and my views are not his. And I think he's wrong, and I think he's made a mistake. But we're friends, and we're friends within the Conservative Party, and we can disagree amiably. I think the truth is that Rishi Sunak has been doing an incredibly good job in very, very difficult circumstances.
They literally, I was going to laugh. I was going to do the laugh, but then they laughed. Genius.
It was too good. It's too good. By the way, whilst we're on the subject of this, make sure we're clipping the good bits. Twitch chat, so I can stick loads of this shit on TikTok. This question is going to have so many golden moments because, again, like, of course he's doing a terrible job, and the people are laughing at you. You're on 20% in the polls, mate. The last poll from YouGov that was not an MRP poll but a regular poll that they did had Labour 27 points ahead. 27
That's a quarter of the entire electorate. What the fuck? That's mental.
It's absolutely incredible. I mean, the seat prediction had the Tories on 12 seats. The public hate you.
They wouldn't even be the opposition. They wouldn't even be third.
No,
the SNP would beat them.
They'd be fourth, behind the Lib Dems and the SNP.
That's genius.
They're almost behind the DUP.
Oh, imagine if they lost to the Northern Irish parties. Oh, that would be fucking... Honestly, I mean, Keir Starmer's going to get in regardless, and he's going to have enough to be a dictator.
So
it doesn't matter if he's 120 or 300 fucking seats majority. Let's just wipe the Tories out. That would be so good. Oh,
so
God, that would be
they're
sexy.
going to get annihilated because the issue is they can't fix the problem. They can't just magic people's mortgages cheaper. I mean, they could magic some growth and some higher living standards by engaging in some new fiscal expansionary policy like Joe Biden has done to get people actually having a moving economy again. But that's completely against conservative economic orthodoxy.
Well,
so they won't do that.
They're
so
only...
they're fucked.
their only answer is more of the same. Which, I mean, you literally can't put out the fire by just adding more fuel to it. It's not gonna work.
Exactly.
We don't want water communism, do we?
Hear me out. So this has probably been.
Why do you think? No, just you a minute. Why do you think people are laughing?
I'm just going to finish what I'm saying. This has been.
See, these people are they're children, and they literally they can't take the fact that the country hates them and that maybe the ideology that they believe in has just completely failed the country.
Oh, that's such a brutal question. Why do you think they're laughing at you?
I think if anything shows you that this government is on the way out, very specifically, is how often this happens. Remember Rachel McLean on
I do, yeah.
Question Time specifically being laughed at? Remember the Amber Rudd moment from 2017, where she literally said in the leadership debate in 2017, because Theresa May was too fucking chicken shit to do the debate panel. She said, "At least judge us on our record," and the whole place fucking burst at laughing at them.
Yeah.
The most challenging parliaments, I think, in any of our lifetimes. We've had
war in Ukraine, coronavirus pandemic, same excuses every time.
Yeah, but you've had an 80-90 seat majority, which I mean it's a difficult fucking that's an aberration in British politics to have a majority that large.
It's true. It is very funny watching them unable to pass basic legislation, even with an 80-seat majority.
And they've stacked the shit out of the Lords, and the Lords are still going to kick it back. Genius.
Exactly. What is interesting though is actually people who study politics and cover politics like we do a lot. I know Phil from a different bias does this a lot. We'll talk about the internal Tory party psychodrama and talk about how big this has ruined the image of the Conservative Party. How can anyone vote for a party this incompetent when the vast majority of voters literally aren't fucking paying attention? But you know what they are paying attention to? How much their mortgage is, how much the cost of living is, how much their wages are rising. It's always about the economy, stupid. Like, it's as simple as that. All this Tory psychodrama, it's funny for us to cover. Believe me, the banter timeline is great. Big fan of the banter timeline. But in terms of how people are going to vote, it's going to be the economy.
Yeah.
We have had the biggest health crisis in 100 years. We've had the first war in Europe since 1945. We've had the biggest energy crisis since.
Excuse me? But
Yugoslav wars, anybody?
Literally, balkanization is a phrase that exists, right? The internecine slaughter across the Balkan region. No, that didn't happen. Okay, dickhead.
It's the 1970s, the highest inflation since the 1980s, and it's been tough. It has been tough.
Who was in control in the 1980s? What happened there?
Exactly. And even then, it's like the inflationary pressures that we're seeing at the moment. You can literally, I wish that you would just tell the public there's nothing we can do about the inflationary problems, right? We trying to help you as much as we can, but it's all stuff that's outside of our control. But the problem is that their economic orthodoxy, I know I talk about this all the time, but it's a really important point to understand here, that the reason why everything is fucked specifically, it is fucked here and it's not fucked in America very specifically, is because under the conservative economic doctrine that they believe in, they believe that inflation is always a consequence of monetary policy, i.e. there is inflation because there is too much money. There is too much money in circulation, so they can't spend any more money because that would make inflation worse. Because they spent money during the pandemic, essentially. We need to wait for that to tail off, which is why they've been curtailing spending and trying to do austerity politics. On the opposite side of our decision, we think that can sometimes be the case, but there can also a thing called cost push inflation, which is what's happened because grain prices have gone up, oil prices have gone up. It's had a shock through the economy. There's not much that you can do in response to that to make those prices go any lower. But austerity won't bring inflation down. You have to engage in fiscal expansion to stop a recession from happening. Now, that's what Joe Biden has done. Their inflation's still gone down. Wages have increased. There's been no wage price spiral. And their wages have... They're through the cost of living crisis already there. In the broadest terms, outside of the fact that their cost of living was already difficult for working class people because they have a really unequal economy. But in the UK... everybody's still poor because we literally have the Bank of England going, we can't drop interest rates right now so people can have some relief from the cost of living crisis, because that would mean wages would rise too much. And that would lead to a wage price spiral. But we have the evidence from America showing that it wouldn't fucking happen. They've started dropping rates already.
And do you know what? The IMF says that the UK is going to grow faster than Japan, faster than Germany, faster than France, faster than Italy. Our economy is recovering.
Oh, faster
one of the
growth
main
than
reasons
Italy
for
and
that is
Japan.
Rishi Sunak.
Oh, so we're setting our sights high then, are we?
Yeah, so 2 countries who are dead.
Well, 2 countries who are literally who are just well known for having no growth. Remember during the 2017 election, it was comparing us to the terrible Italian economy, even though their debt to GDP was lower than ours, but it was more stagnant. There's more stagnation. Japan have had 30 years of missed growth. It's this economic phenomenon of 30 years of missed growth with no inflation and a gigantic fiscal deficit that they've run. So their debt to GDP ratio is 250%, and they've had no inflationary crisis, and they've had no growth. That's literally like Japan's economy is very famous for having no growth. What a ridiculous comparison.
True, but their growth was killed by a guy with a homemade gun. Oh no, that was Shinzo Abe. Sorry.
Hey, crab rave.
The job that he did when he was in the Treasury,
Pronouns.
the furlough, the plan that he brought in when he became Prime Minister to bring down inflation now more than halved, to grow the economy and give us the space to cut taxes so that we can grow the economy further. I think that he has done a really good job in difficult circumstances. And I think when it gets to the election, when it's not about polls anymore, when it's about people having to decide who's got a plan for the next 5 years, they'll choose Rishi Sunak over Keir Starmer and the Labour Party, who quite frankly have no plan for the country at all.
I mean,
Dead silence.
He's not wrong.
End. Oh no, he's not wrong. But that, I mean, in a way, I don't really care about whether they're right or wrong, because they're just talking points. My thought is the instant reaction. They laughed at him at the start, and then at the end, you could hear a pin drop.
It's total silence. Total silence. Well, the issue is, of course, is they can't really point to Keir Starmer having no plan, because they haven't got a plan either. Their plan is literally more of the same, and the more of the same that they are promising us is the problem that's got us to this position in the first place.
It's is it Spider-Men or Spider-Mans? What's the plural there? Spider-Men. Fuck it. It's 2 Spider-Men pointing at each other going, you haven't got a plan.
No. No, that's neither of them. I mean, I will give Keith some credit. He has more of a plan than the Tories do, but that's like, you know, the lowest bar possible.
True, but he will go back on that plan before the election, I'm sure. Have a new plan, which he also won't do.
Yeah, exactly. It's like, if you've got such a good job, why 27 points behind? Like,
yeah, exactly.
There's a reason why Simon Clarke said what he said, because Simon Clarke is not an idiot. He can see the writing on the wall like everybody else can.
Yeah, a good government doesn't get behind by 27 points. That's ridiculous.
And this is
like,
why,
a good government shouldn't be behind at all, but like, come on.
And this is why so many rightoid MPs in the Tory party are obsessed with the idea of solving Rwanda as their ticket to electoral success, because they fundamentally believe that their approach to the economy is the only approach that makes sense. Anybody else is very stupid and is economically illiterate. Yet, people's living standards are still shit. That's what's going to decide your fate. It's whether or not the Rwanda plan works or not is completely inconsequential.
Okay, there was someone clapping there. So if you want to clap, you can clap. If you don't, obviously, I don't want people to be intimidated. They can't express their views. So let me come back. Why is that not cutting through? Certainly with quite a bit of the audience here, people were laughing at that.
You'll have to ask them. But
she's gone back to
Please ask them. Please ask them.
Yeah, she's really twisting his bollocks on this one. Why are they laughing at you?
I mean,
Please,
I would like to find out.
Just examine why these people find you so fucking risible. Really,
this is literally question time. You can get the audience to elucidate why it is they hate them.
There is time for questioning. Yes, yeah, you could ask them. If you laughed, would you like to tell the minister why you laughed at him? Let's all just stand up and point and laugh and go ha 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 ha, ha and give this guy a freak out that he'll dream about for the rest of his life.
Yeah, look, I think that we have been in power a long time and we've had a lot to deal with. But I think when you look at where the country has been and where it's going, it's obvious that the right decisions have been made. We're seeing.
Okay, no,
we're
you've
seeing-
made that point, in fairness, yes.
It's
All right, no, fair. Well, you don't need to say it twice. That's all.
incorrect. It's just completely incorrect as well.
Oh, she's just rinsing him now. I love it. Yeah, no, you've already said that.
Well, also as well as that, over that 14 years, they've basically been hated the entire time. They only won in 2015 because the Lib Dem vote collapsed. It was a coalition in 2010. It was a coalition, technically, in 2017. In 2019, they abandoned conservatism for like right-wing populism, and also they got elected because of Brexit.
And they've had an unbelievably compliant media that whole time.
Exactly. You're absolutely right. 2019 was this gigantic outlier because of the shadow of Brexit, and that's actually probably, and because they changed policy plans, the only conservative government that's had support from the public, rather than keep the other guy out, or I guess it's better than nothing. They've been disliked for the 14 years of their premiership.
Yeah. The Tories learned nothing from 2019. The first time in generations that places, the much fabled Red Wall has voted for the Tories because you offered them something. You offered them even if it was a lie, even if they were never going to build 40 hospitals, you offered them something. So they felt like they could give you their vote. Whereas now they've gone, nah, fuck them. We're not giving them anything. Why aren't they voting for us? It's actually not that difficult, guys. If you offer people nothing but a plate of shit, they're probably not going to vote for that. Even if the other guy is offering you a plate of shit, but it's coloured red. Do you know what I mean?
Well, but
I was going to say something different.
Okay, no, in that case, no.
It's not, and it's not just the economy. It's the fact that our standards
in
in education have gone up, that neighbourhood crime has gone down, that we are starting to see real progress, despite the fact that we've had one of the hardest parliaments that anyone will remember.
Jonathan.
Well, look. In some ways, it would be easy to gloat, but I'm obviously not going to do that. Because, to be frank, after 14 years, when people are paying more on their mortgage because the Conservatives wrecked the economy, when people are paying, or families are paying £1,200 more on average in tax because of the weakness of the economy, when you can't get an appointment with a GP, or you're waiting longer for an operation in the NHS because of 14 years of the Conservatives, that frankly, the British public deserve better than this constant division, infighting, this sort of circular firing squad, this sort of shambolic approach that we see from the Conservative Party. And I just think now, after 14 years, what we've seen this week is the clearest reminder that people want change. It's time for change. It's time to turn the page on this mess, because they simply cannot be trusted with the future, nor make amends for the past. It's time for change. We need a general election, and this country needs to move on from the 14 years of decline that the Tories have given us.
Good answer. I mean, fundamentally, they won't change anything, but it's still a good answer.
He's like a male
Solid.
form of Lisa Nandy. That's a good point, Solly. He really is, in terms of lack of charisma and delivery. And the other thing, as well, as what's frustrating, is they say 14 years of the Conservatives rather than 14 years of conservatism. It's very frustrating. I mean, I guess they have to try and get people to vote against the party or whatever. The internal psychodrama is part of that kind of party culture rather than necessarily the ideology. But if you want to talk about the failures of the NHS, if you want to talk about the failures of lack of growth, of lack of investment, if you want to talk about the kind of shambolic nature that they've managed the economy, then you have to point at the ideology that caused those things rather than the blue team being bad. But of course they can't do that because they're not offering anything different.
Yeah. He's the Lisa Nandy of Wes Streetings. Fact.
And there in the in the sort of pale green top, I think it's.
I actually respect Rich's optimism, because only
Alex's
Alex's
optimism.
I'm wrong. Sorry, Alex's optimism only because I feel like you would need to be pretty far removed to think that Rishi Sunak or this government has done well in the past 5 years, let alone the past 14 years, which has felt like, a 14-year long episode of the thick of it. So I would say like you'll say that Labour have no plan, but I feel like maybe Labour's plan might be a lot better than, I guess, because you can't really run on anything. You can't run on the road because there are so many potholes. We spoke about that earlier. You can't run on NHS waiting times because they're terrible. You can't run on the economy. And you talk about, Rishi Sunak's done this, done all that. I have noticed recently, especially in the past few weeks, he'll tweet that he's done these things. We've lowered this, we'll lower that. He'll get community noted quite a bit. So I think it's quite worrying when the Prime Minister is openly saying, we're doing all these really, really great things. But it's really obvious by the stats and just by everything that's just not true, is it?
I will let you come back and answer that.
We just saw a murder.
Absolutely.
A murder took place there.
Hello, police. Hello, police. I have witnessed a murder.
That was an execution.
It really was. I mean, he's right. He's not wrong. Like, he's not wrong at all.
Not remotely
There's
wrong,
nothing that they can wrong on. What have they got? 14 years of the Conservative government. What do they even have to show for it? They don't even have any legislation that they can say. What legislation have they passed?
Couldn't even run on a fucking treadmill.
They got Brexit done. That's it. They got Brexit done. That's the only thing they can run on.
True, but they've also got rid of the up and ready deal, which they said they were going to get rid of anyway.
Or in secret behind the backs of the other Conservative MPs when talking with Ian Paisley Jr.
So the original question was, should Rishi Sunak be replaced with someone else to save the Conservative Party? I mean, you could dig up the corpse of Winston Churchill and reanimate it. It still wouldn't save the Conservative Party. Whenever the next election happens, the Tories are going to get what they deserve, which is a massive drubbing. They will lose lots of seats. They will lose lots of MPs, and that's because they have failed to deliver the things they promised the British people. They promised to reduce immigration to the tens of thousands. Last year was over 600,000. They promised to...
Can I just say, you are an immigrant, mate?
And also, just that doesn't matter to people. Like, really and truly, immigration in terms of where it rates in terms of people's concerns for the next election, even in the generation that most cares about, which is the older generation, it still lags behind NHS waiting lists and the state of the economy. That's how much that it's not really relevant, that even the most kind of frothing at the mouth anti-immigrant generations of this country still are more concerned about how much their mortgage costs and whether they can see a doctor. Basic bread and butter shit, which is the world we're living in now. These things have actually collapsed after all the damage that George Osborne did to them. You can't just run on identical economic platforms and different on cultural norms and expect that to be the way the Conservatives can get back into government over and over and over and over and over again, like they could in the elections previous. When your entire economy collapses, the public services that everybody knows you can't be trusted with actually collapse like we told you that we would. Of course, we got what they wanted, as always, left, right, again. What a surprise. You can't just pretend that these other side issues can be pushed up the electoral agenda when people can't feed their kids.
Here in the south and in the Red Wall in the north, the small C Conservative voters in the Red Wall are not going to vote for a party that has allowed this. They've kicked out all the people in the party or removed them from office who were actually prepared to be honest about the problems they faced, like Suella Braverman. They're going...
Suella! You Suella, friend.
I fucking hate this idiot. And again, this is literally somebody who went to private school, so of course he is in no way connected to the real problems that are causing the Conservative Party to lose, which is the fucking economy. He's here bleating about, all this illegal immigration problem. Nobody voted for this, which is true, right? There is a democratic deficit in terms of the way in which the Conservative Party have approached legal migration. Really, is the actual issue that's going to kill them if immigration is the biggest problem at the election, which of course it's not going to be. But if it was, the 700,000 legal migrants is the actual problem for a Conservative Party's democratic deficit, not their legal duty under international law to process asylum claims by the Refugee Convention. Now, that's a completely different subject here. But again, he's talking as though, just like Jonathan Gullis would, solving the Rwanda issue, right? Solving the immigration issue would be their ticket towards electoral success.
Because he's a
people
YouTuber.
People want to pay their mortgages. It's this.
Yeah, he's a YouTuber.
So
the thing that matters to him is weird shit and pronouns and nonsense.
I'm going to look at. Let me 5 minutes. I'm going to look at Social Blade. Let's get a Social Blade. Let's look up how much money Trigonometry make just on AdSense revenue alone. Yeah, of course he is concerned about whether Braverman is right or not about the problems with irregular migration across the channel, rather than paying the mortgage because this guy's splitting 20k with his podcast host a month.
Yep.
They
Absolutely.
make it. Their podcast makes in a month what I make in a year.
Thank
Even
you,
in my
Logan,
normal
for it.
job.
Yeah.
Of course, he give a shit about the economy.
Going to get the drubbing that they deserve. Nobody can save them.
No,
By the way,
he does. By the way, he does have a point. If one of your main issues is immigration, you shouldn't vote for the Conservatives because they have let you down.
Yes, but it's not wrong. It's not incorrect to say there's a democratic deficit there. But the fact that his opening gambit on what's the problem with the Conservative Party, why are they losing the election, and his opening gambit is it's because they failed in immigration. He just fundamentally misunderstands every kind of poll on the actual concerns of people in this country. Because really, I've pointed this out on stream loads of times. We're like a pro-immigrant country. We want lower immigration, but we are not hostile to immigrants themselves very often.
Yeah. So a Russian misunderstanding polls. Story as old as time itself.
Absolutely.
it's not to say the Labour are going to be any better, but that is what's going to happen.
Okay, so look, I said just now that there are many of you who voted Conservative in 2019, and I know a number of you who also intend to vote Conservative the next election. So in the interest of balance, because I notice that there's a lot of hands up of people who clearly want to have a go at the government, and we'll hear from you again as well. Is there anyone here who wants to speak up for Rishi Sunak or speak up for the government?
There's one white bloke. There's one white bloke.
There's one guy. Okay, friend. There's one. The entire audience. Oh, there's two. There's a lady at the back there, I think. Oh she's
just wiping her face. Yeah,
she's just biting her nails. Okay, the one person in the entire audience who wants to defend Rishi Sunak. People keep saying, "Oh, the polls are wrong. They'll tighten coming up to the election. You can't make predictions now. The Tories are successful at election time. Look at 2017." I'm like, no, it's over. It's so over. No one comes back from this. It's over. It's completely over.
Rishi Sunak, the point is, for the last 14 years, the Tories have failed to deliver on the things. Forget about, whether Labour are happy with them. The problem is they have failed to deliver the things they promised their own electorate. And Rishi Sunak is not the problem. The problem is the Conservative Party.
Okay, well,
they don't have an electorate, though. They don't have an electorate, really and truly. I mean, they've got a base. That's fine, sure. But actually, the small Conservative base who care about his opening gambit there is actually vanishingly small nowadays. It's mostly older people, really and truly. Again, because we all have to go back to what I've said the entire segment, which is the economy. And most people are ambivalent. We have a really fickle electorate in this country, much less so than America, for example, which I know Constantine looks at a lot in terms of politics because he has to engage with their culture war share, because that's his grift. His grift is culture war shit. That's how he makes his £20,000 a month in YouTube AdSense revenue at maximum, of course, based upon Social Blade's prediction of that. So he can't understand that actually most people just want to vote for a party that can make sure that their living standards can improve, that their housing costs are low, that their taxes aren't too high, and their public services work. And the Conservative government hasn't done any of these things, so they're going to get destroyed at the election. It's very, very simple.
That was basically my point. I'm not about to stand up for the Conservative Party or the government. They've chucked us in.
So even the guy who put his hand up isn't going to defend them.
He's defending Rishi. I'll defend Rishi Sunak for exactly the same point. Rishi Sunak has had a gigantic poisoned chalice that he can do nothing with. Like George Osborne followed out the welfare state and the public services. Liz Truss crashed the economy, and Boris Johnson undermined all of the anti-immigration things that he said he would run on. Rishi Sunak can literally do nothing. There's nothing he can do.
Two points here. Firstly, no one made him do this. No, you didn't have to become Prime Minister. So a poison chalice would be like something foisted upon somebody. He did this on his own. Secondly, this is partly still on him. I'm sorry. He was Chancellor of the Exchequer and made the situation worse. His very actions made the situation worse during COVID. Simple as that. And secondly, as Prime Minister, having taken over from the person who took over from Boris Johnson, he could have built 40 new hospitals or something.
I mean, exactly. I mean, if you want to blame Rishi Sunak for anything, it's being given a mandate for economic interventionism by the electorate in 2019 that he literally doesn't believe in, that he fought against Boris Johnson doing during Boris Johnson's premiership, and that he has completely reversed course on, that he's undermined and scrapped with no mandate now that he's Prime Minister. Again, the real problems that Rishi Sunak has failed on, that you can actually screw him on, is the economy, because he was Chancellor when the economy was failing, and he is the Prime Minister now. He's not doing anything to solve it, and is actually doing the opposite of what the electorate wants and voted for in their droves.
Yeah.
In the whole, I mean, yes, there've been external factors, just as there were in 2010 when the Tory opposition then was saying, "Oh, Gordon Brown's crashed the economy," and the Labour Party at the time was saying, "Well, Lehman Brothers, heard of that?" And it's history repeating itself. Yes, there've been global external factors, and the economy's in a whole.
There always have been.
But the government has done a lousy job over the past.
The big irony here is that actually Labour are to blame for the global financial crisis affecting the UK in the way that it did. But the effect was because they were too right-wing. There was too much deregulation in the financial sector, not enough prudential regulation, not enough capital controls, because Tony Blair was in bed with the financial sector because it was powering out this high levels of growth that was throughout the entirety of the new Labour period. But of course the Conservatives can't recognise that because they want the same shit.
No, exactly, yeah. That's the unquestionable part of it. You can tinker around the edges with fucking forcing kids to brush their teeth at school, but you can't question neoliberal orthodoxy.
Well, again, because it's the same neoliberal orthodoxy that both parties now again believe in that's caused all of the problems that have been exacerbated by COVID and the war in Ukraine. All of these things would be far less relevant to our economy if we'd have decarbonised faster, if we had a fairer economy, if we hadn't just thrown fiscal expansion at the energy crisis and instead did better windfall taxes on energy. Like, there's so many different choices we could have made, but they didn't get made because they were against the orthodoxy of neoliberalism.
5 years, whatever, ever since the mop-headed Muppet came in. Sunak is not the problem. Sunak is the nearest thing they've got to a solution. He ain't going to fix it, but it's the best thing they've got.
Okay. Man there in the blue jacket.
I'm not sure about that. But
the problem is George Osborne, really, but...
Well, exactly. I mean, that's the cool part of it. But, like, you could have someone who isn't, like, a weird little mini robot man.
Oh, that's true.
Just,
he is
just
like
on a basic
electoral
level.
cancer. Like, he's unlikable, he's doing nothing, and he is the person who refuses to be allowed to be criticised. He's the worst man for the job, really and truly, at this point. But
he's so unbelievably rich and like entitled, and people aren't going to react to that well.
Yeah, at a time when everybody is feeling the pinch, it is a really rich lull, pun not intended, for somebody who is richer than the fucking king coming down and promising all of the miserated masses that he can fix the problems, right? When really what we need to solve the country is the son of a toolmaker.
True. And a nurse.
And a
if
nurse.
If there was some combination of that that would
who
work.
Grew up in a
really
Pebble
well.
Dash semi, no less, right? Salt of the earth lawyer.
Yeah, Salt of the Earth, who was head of the DPP, yeah.
Salt of the Earth Trilateral Commission member.
Whoop, whoop.
14 years, okay? The NHS is now broken. The councils are broke. The water companies are taking record profits while they poison our rivers. There's global profits from UK-based companies that aren't paying half their taxes. And you're saying...
Sure.
And you're saying that the Tories have done a great job for over 40 years and are going to continue to do it. I'm sorry, sir, but you're deluded.
Okay, Alex, I will come back to you.
Decapitation.
Monster
Let the rest of the
kill.
panel talk as well. So, Sonia, let's deal with the nub of Craig's question. With Labour being...
Why did he agree to come on this show?
I mean, that's why they've got some, like, junior minister rather than anybody from the cabinet, some nobody from bumfuck Nowheresville. They're just being their human shield.
Yeah, exactly. They were going to send someone important, and then he went, "No, I'm not fucking doing that. You're joking." Have you seen how hated we are?
Being so far ahead in the polls, Craig is asking, should the Conservatives look to a new leader now, as Simon Clarke is suggesting, rather than waiting until after losing the next general election? Is there anything in Simon Clarke's argument, would you say?
It's absolutely bonkers. In fact, I feel like Constantine took my argument right out of my mouth, which is that it's a Conservative Party problem, not a Rishi Sunak problem. I was literally going to come on here and say that myself.
So if they change lead, it wouldn't make any difference?
No, it won't make any difference at all. In fact, I think people will just look at the party and say, even more chaos. Since the 2019 general election,
No one cares about the chaos.
3 prime ministers.
People care about their
One of them
mortgages,
was the
Sonia.
shortest-serving prime minister that this
Oh, it's
country has ever
infuriating listening to
seen
these
because
people who
she
don't live in the
triggered
real world. Oh, why do they? They don't live in the real world.
Well, they don't, but I think it doesn't. The mood music matters to a degree, in part not because the people are necessarily watching, but because the people who make the news are watching. If that makes sense. So if they're that chaotic, the press going into a general election will be even worse than it would otherwise be. So there is a certain point to it, I guess. But yeah, your average person doesn't know. Your average person doesn't remember who the prime minister was 2 prime ministers ago. You know what I mean? They don't give a fuck
Because they
about
change
that.
so frequently, it's really difficult to keep track.
Yeah,
but even so,
I would imagine there's a fair percentage of the population who genuinely think a lettuce was in the running.
I mean, absolutely, yeah, the pro-Romaine lobby. But at the end of the day, as Jack Mello rightly took the words straight out of my mouth in chat, it's an ideology problem. It's not a Conservative Party problem. It's a conservatism problem. It's a neoliberalism problem. It's a capitalism problem.
Yeah, wait, indeed, yes.
A massive economic crisis. The idea
not
that
that any of the
changing
melters
person
on
at the
this
top is gonna
panel will
fix
say
it just
that,
doesn't
but
wash. And it's kind of hard to do better than the audience has done in terms of evaluating the government's records. But I guess one thing I want to say to Alex is, yes, it's true. This government over the last 13 years has faced some very difficult external factors. I think, people are fair. Everyone in this audience would acknowledge that. The issue is that this is a government that has made political choices that has made everything so much worse. And what do I mean by that? Well, first of all, I'm talking about austerity. I'm talking about public spending cuts. I'm talking about the fact that successive Conservative chancellors from 2010 onwards actually cut income tax in a way that disproportionately helped more affluent families, while at the same time cutting services that help some of the most vulnerable people in society. I'm talking about...
I hate to agree with Sonia Soda on something, but she's right. Because again, the issue, the easy way of pointing this out, they say, oh, well, the issue, of course, is the war in Ukraine and the coronavirus pandemic. The first response you must always have to this is every single indicator that is being negatively affected by both of those totemic events, all of those indicators were bad and getting worse before either of them happened.
Yeah, exactly. And it's always a very convenient excuse to use those external factors. There's always been some external factors, whether it be an international credit crunch, America goes into recession, there's a war somewhere, fucking an Arab country falls, and so the price of oil spikes or something. You know what I mean? There's always some fucking thing.
Yeah, R.I.P. Callahan.
And there's indeed, and as a government, you just have to fucking deal with that shit. You just do. I'm sorry.
What is interesting is I will always allow the government to be able to use the pandemic as at least somewhat of an excuse up to a point. I think it's reasonable to think that the coronavirus pandemic is like a once-in-a-lifetime thing that has these really negative effects. And that is really 100% true. I think that there's plenty of times where you could let some of the Tory failure to engage with a bunch of stuff from the manifesto, that the change they wanted to make. Well, they spent 3 years dealing with a pandemic and then they got to their legislative manifesto. That's reasonable and fair. But very few governments across Europe have survived the pandemic. Like, every government falls during the pandemic. It's really weird watching them kind of crumble one by one. But basic shit in response to the oil crisis, which they've just massively failed on, and doubling down on not having a proper green transition. Like, it's simple stuff that they're failing on in terms of how they respond to these crises.
Talking about the kinds of services that local government is responsible for providing. So things like homelessness services, things like older people who get support.
Again, having mentioned COVID and homelessness, I do just have to point out my constant bugbear with it. When homelessness in the form of COVID was going to potentially affect rich people, the government found housing for those homeless people, because we couldn't have them on the street spreading COVID. That might affect rich people. As soon as it wasn't that much of a big deal, back out on the streets, you cunts. It's interesting, that, isn't it? They could and should find the housing. They don't need to. It's a choice.
It still makes me absolutely...
Homelessness is a choice. It's a choice by the government.
It's true. It is a political choice that's been taken. It makes me very sad that Jeremy Corbyn's first thing that he would do would be to end homelessness on day one, and people chose the floppy hair Hitler man.
Yeah, what's that? Just rough sleeping communism.
Their care. We've got over 1 million older people living in this country who can't get the support they need with tasks like washing, bathing and eating. And what kind of a country is that? Vulnerable children. Look at what's happening with children.
One of the richest countries in the world, chat.
Yeah,
one of the most
children
richest
with
countries in the
special
world.
educational needs.
Where 1 in 5 people lives in poverty. Super awesome.
The kind of society that you pay for. It was a political choice to do tax cuts for the better off and to cut back on public spending for some of the more vulnerable groups. And we really see that as a society now. When you look at the barometers of what's going on in our society, the numbers of people who are rough sleeping, for example, the numbers of children who are absent from school, the number of children starting school without basic skills. This is partly as a result of the government making political choices to pull that social safety net away from people.
Manda.
300,000 dead.
Is this election really just going to end up who do we like or dislike the least over a long period of time? Our politics are adversarial, and each time round the parties change, and all you hear is from the other party, oh, if we were in power, we'd be doing this, they're doing that wrong. And you hear this each time. We need to go back even further than the last 14 years and go back and include the parliaments that were held by the Labour parties. How much has really improved going back, actually, probably to the 1970s, 80s? How much has really improved?
I wonder what happened in the 70s and 80s that might have made the country worse and never have improved throughout that entire period. I wonder what big kind of epoch of British politics started right then. Do the maths.
He's so close to working something out there. He's so close to getting. He's noticed a thing and he can't quite fit the pieces together, but he's fumbling around there for something. And I feel like that's kind of a perfect summation to British people. They can't quite put the pieces together. They know something's desperately wrong, but they can't quite fit it all together. And that's a shame.
Egg on both their houses?
Yes, absolutely.
Okay.
Surprisingly based. Okay.
We'll start with the...
So to Sonia's point, yeah, we came in and we made cuts. And I think most people are aware of why that was necessary. It was necessary because the last administration left the economy in the sewer.
That's not true.
Okay, but you literally, the point she was making was you made tax cuts disproportionately beneficial to the richest in the population. You didn't have to do that because the economy was bad.
Yeah, and also on top of that, you didn't have to make cuts at all. In fact, we were in a liquidity trap. You're supposed to fiscally expand in a liquidity trap. That's why things were miserable for so long, was because we never got out of that liquidity trap because you didn't spend any fucking money. And if you're going to use a metric of, well, the debt to GDP ratio was high in 2010, and so that means the economy was in a state, the debt to GDP ratio increased every single year from 2010 to 2016. So if you want to claim, and obviously it's massively higher now, almost doubly so in 2024, but that pandemic notwithstanding, like if you want to say you had to make difficult decisions to bring that down, you did the opposite. You made everything even worse. How can we trust you on your own austerity that you said was necessary when you didn't even do that correctly? You just murdered poor people for nothing.
It is absolutely,
Alex, that is not
Sonia,
true.
Sonia, it's absolutely true. That's
it is not true. There was a global
no,
financial crisis,
yes,
and the Conservatives in the run-up to that general election
the exposure to that crisis was greater in this country because of the decisions that Gordon Brown had made when he was in charge of our economy.
Hang on a second.
No, it was the choices that were made by Margaret Thatcher when she deregulated the fucking banks. Obviously, Blair and Brown should have changed that rather than sticking with Thatcherite or economic orthodoxy. But that's your ideology. That's your fucking fault. That's Thatcherism's fault. Obviously, Blair and Brown are bad for following on in that doctrine, but to say that you would have done things better when all you offered was more of the same, but even worse, and want to deregulate further now, God, this is completely nonsensical. It's completely nonsensical. This is why that's why I'm desperate to be in the audience and just say, no, hang on a minute, no, pause 1 second, right? Pause 1 second. Your government killed more people than Idi Amin did. You can shut the fuck up and you can get the fuck out.
Yeah.
But the comments they've made about your government, I think that's probably what people want to hear.
What I'm explaining is the decisions that we had to make when we came into power, which were difficult decisions. And because of those decisions, since 2010, the UK economy has grown faster than our European competitors. That is a sign, I'm afraid, that things have been working, even in very difficult times.
Okay, we're going to have to try and... That's fucking driving me mad. Shall I refresh the page and hope it doesn't go mental?
I mean, I thought that what he was saying was driving mad, because it's driving me mad what he's saying there.
Oh, no, it's absolute bollocks, but the fact that it's just out of lip sync, I can't even focus on what he's saying, because it just feels like I'm watching a dub version of it or something.
Because what he's saying there is he's looking at a general public who hates his party for the living standards that they've created for them, that has absolutely screwed up the economy of this country, that screwed up this country's economy for huge swathes of the population, and then it's just turning round to them and saying, how dare you criticise me for ruining your living standards? How dare you denigrate the actions of this government from 2010 until now? Everything is rosy. Look at the red line go up. That means the world must be more gooder. We've had higher growth than our European competitors. If you think that we've done badly and your living standards are bad, then you're just wrong. The electorate is wrong and I'm right. Fingers in my ears, blah, blah, blah. It's exactly like last week when we were watching it, and somebody said, well, what are you supposed to say to the people for what you've done over the last 14 years? And my first one was, how about apologise? How about have some contrition? But no, these people live in such a tiny little bubble. They see literally half the country wanting to vote for their opposition at this point, in terms of the electorate who answer polls, I guess. And they look at them and say, no, you're wrong. Look at the numbers. The numbers say you should be happy. And that's demented. It's demented politics.
Yeah.
Hey there, if you enjoyed the video, make sure that you like and leave a comment. That helps the video out in the algorithm. If you subscribe and ring the bell, it'll let you know when I go live. I stream every day on YouTube and Twitch. You can also follow all of my socials down in the description. And if you want to support me in a more financial manner, there's a join button for membership. It's just 99p to be a member on YouTube, as well as a Patreon, and there's some merch there as well. And hopefully I'll catch you on the next video. Take care.